You spent decades becoming a master of saving. You diligently fed your RSP, you watched it grow, and now you have a substantial RRIF. You did everything by the book. But now that it's time to actually spend it, you're freezing. That nest egg you worked so hard for suddenly feels untouchable. If the thought of making a withdrawal that isn't the mandatory minimum makes you feel anxious or even a little guilty, I want you to know something. You're definitely not alone. It's a powerful and surprisingly common psychological trap that catches some of the most successful savers in Canada. Before we go further, it's important to be clear about who this applies to. This conversation is not about spending recklessly or ignoring sustainability. It applies when your retirement income and withdrawals are already well within long-term sustainability limits. If spending more would put your future security at risk, this does not apply. Today, we're going to explore the number one behavioral trap that often keeps retirees from enjoying their money: loss aversion. Then, I'll give you 3 conceptual mindset shifts to finally flip the switch from saver to spender, so you can start living the retirement you actually earned. For 30 or 40 years, the mission was simple: save more, spend less. You were disciplined, you delayed gratification, you set up those automatic transfers to your RSP, and you felt a wave of security as you watched the balance climb. That discipline is what built your wealth. It's why you have a comfortable retirement today. But here's the paradox. That very saver identity that got you here is now working against you. The mental muscles you trained for accumulation are now fighting you on the whole idea of decumulation or spending down. So let's think about it. We're going from a regular paycheck that always gets refilled to a fixed pot of money. This is a massive psychological shift. During your working years, if you spent money, you knew more was coming in. In retirement, that's flipped completely on its head. Every dollar you spend can feel like it's gone for good, shrinking a resource you just can't top up anymore. This feeling is totally normal, but it's preventing Canadians from living their best lives. In fact, studies show that a significant number of retirees underspend so much that their nest egg keeps growing, even when they could easily afford a better lifestyle. The main reason we struggle with this comes down to a behavioral trap known as loss aversion. Basically, psychologists have found that for most of us, the pain of losing something feels about twice as strong as the pleasure of gaining that exact same thing. Not sure? How would you feel if you lost a $100 bill? Now, how would you feel if you found a $100 bill? For most people, that sting of the loss is way more intense than the thrill of the gain. When you're retired and staring at your RRIF balance, this principle goes into overdrive. After a lifetime of seeing a rising balance as success and security, watching that number go down triggers a powerful sense of loss. Even though that money is meant to be spent, your brain is screaming at you that it's a step backwards, a failure, that your life's work is vanishing. It doesn't feel like you're funding your retirement. It feels like you're losing your savings. This feeling is the root of spending anxiety. It's no wonder that surveys consistently find a huge number of Canadians are terrified they'll outlive their savings. This fear exists even for people with perfectly healthy RRIFs, causing them to live way more frugally than they need to. They just take the government-mandated minimum withdrawal, not because it's the right amount for their lifestyle, but because it's the smallest loss they're forced to accept. But loss aversion doesn't work alone. It's got a couple of tricky sidekicks that make it even harder to spend. First, there's default bias. When we're faced with complex choices, our brains love to take the path of least resistance. For RRIF holders, the default is simply taking the minimum required withdrawal. It's easy, it feels safe, and it requires 0 decisions. That minimum is just a government formula. And while it gets updated over time to account for things like longer lifespans, it's not a custom-tailored spending plan for you. Sticking to the minimum, especially early in retirement, can mean missing out on amazing experiences. It might even create a bigger tax bill for your estate later on. The second trap is how we think about our legacy. Many diligent savers naturally want to leave a healthy inheritance. It's a wonderful goal. But when it's driven by loss aversion, it becomes a bit of a problem. You end up acting like a custodian of your wealth and not its direct beneficiary. You preserve the capital at all costs, even at the expense of your own quality of life. Together, these psychological forces can feel like they're locking the cookie jar, even though you're the one who baked the cookies in the first place. So, before we jump into the solutions, I'd love to hear from you. Have you felt this resistance to spending? Does watching your RRIF balance go down give you a little bit of anxiety? Let me know. Seriously. Sharing your experience helps everyone realize they aren't the only ones feeling this way. So how do we break free? It doesn't start with a fancy spreadsheet. It starts right here, by reframing how you think. You have to give yourself permission to spend, and here are 3 ways to do it. Reframe spending as a victory lap. Your entire life, spending has been the enemy of saving. It's time to tear up that definition. Withdrawing from your RRIF isn't a loss. It is the successful execution of your decades-long plan. Think of it like this. A company that just hoards cash isn't successful until it uses that cash to build a new factory or pay a dividend to its shareholders. The savings was the strategy, but the spending is the whole point. Your RRIF withdrawals are like your dividends. They are your victory lap. You won the saving game. It's time to collect the prize. Start by tying your spending to specific goals. Don't just withdraw money. Instead, fund the trip to Italy, finance your woodworking hobby, or plan an epic family reunion. When spending has a purpose you care about, it stops feeling like a loss and starts feeling like a life well lived. One of the biggest sources of anxiety is the feeling of unstructured, random spending. The fix: stop thinking of your RRIF withdrawals as raids on your savings. Instead, build yourself a steady retirement paycheck. Sit down with someone and map out all of your income, your mandatory RRIF withdrawal, your CPP, your old age security, and any other pensions you might have. Then, decide on a strategic extra amount to withdraw from your RRIF each month to meet the lifestyle you want. By automating this, you turn a bunch of painful little losses into a single, predictable monthly income, just like the paychecks you got your whole career. This simple psychological trick makes the process feel normal and strips the emotion out of every purchase you make. If the fear of shrinking the inheritance you'll leave behind is what's holding you back, it's time to redefine what a legacy actually matters. A legacy isn't just the check your kids get when you're gone. It's the memories you make with them while you're here. Consider creating a living legacy. Instead of just hoarding wealth, use some of it now. Help a grandchild with a down payment for their first home, fund a family vacation that we talked about for generations, be the person who can treat the family to dinner without looking at the prices. Those experiences, the shared joy and memories, are a far richer legacy than a number on a bank statement. When you shift your view from leaving money to creating memories, you can spend those with purpose and joy and not guilt. Once you start shifting your mindset, you can back it up with some practical tools to really build that confidence. Finally, there's working with a professional like me to create a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy. This turns your spending from an emotional gut punch into a smart, tactical move. Pulling from the right accounts in the right order can save you a bundle on taxes and maximize your old age security. Reframing spending as just simply smart execution. The great irony for so many successful savers is that they retire with more than enough money, but live as though they're on the brink of running out. This isn't your fault. It's a psychological hurdle that you built for yourself with decades of admirable discipline. The key is to recognize that the skills that made you a great saver aren't the same skills you need to be a happy retiree. You have to consciously, deliberately give yourself permission to spend. Remember the 3 shifts. See spending as a victory lap, create a predictable retirement paycheck, and build a living legacy of memories, not just money. You've done the hard work. You built the wealth. Now it's time to use it for what it was always meant for, to fund the best and most fulfilling chapter of your life.